Hi, I'm Sally Glass and welcome to Art This Week. On this week's episode, we visit the Dallas Museum of Art and speak with Chief Conservator Mark Leonard about the new Paintings Conservation Studio. Now for Art This Week.
Hi, I'm here at the Dallas Museum of Art with the Chief Conservator Mark Leonard to talk about their new conservation studio. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
My pleasure.
Okay, so to start us off, can you sort of let us know what this new conservation studio means for the DMA in terms of acquisitions and patronage?
Well, the Dallas Museum of Art has a very large collection, over 22,000 objects. And those objects have been very well cared for in the past, but unfortunately only by one in-house conservator. And so the initial goal was to really expand the in-house conservation program and capabilities so that we could really do the best in terms of studying, exhibiting, caring for our own collections without having to hire outside contractors. I'm actually the first in-house paintings conservator to work at the Dallas Museum of Art. There always was an objects conservator in-house, but care for the paintings collection had to be done on a contract basis. So by creating a new conservation studio where the paintings can actually be studied, cared for under our own roof, we're really opening up a whole new window for patrons and for the public into the collection through the world of conservation. My hope is here, in this particular room, that we will not only take care of pictures that are already in the DMA collection, but we'll work with our trustees and with collectors in the area on their collections as well. And in fact, a number of the pictures that we have in the studio right now are privately owned, where we will treat them, care for them, study them, and do all of that work, not for hire, but in exchange for having the chance to then exhibit the pictures in our public galleries. So that way everyone really benefits. The collectors know that their pictures will be cared for to the highest standards. Most of those collectors are already important stakeholders in the institution, either as trustees or donors. It helps build and strengthen those bridges with those collectors, but it's also a great benefit to the public because they have access to works of art for a period of time in the galleries that are normally in private collections and can't be seen.
How have you gone about sort of prioritizing what you work on within the collection?
Yeah. Well, I've spent most of the past year, in addition to building this space, I've done a survey of the paintings collection, really looking not at every single picture, but at almost every single painting in the collection. Working with the curators, because it is a team effort, it's not something that is done in a vacuum, but working with them to prioritize their needs, pictures that are either going out on loan or that have not been able to be put on view because of condition issues. And we have a list of paintings in the collection that are in need of study and treatment, and we'll begin working down through that list now that we actually have a room in which to do the work. And a lot of them really are time-based priorities. We have a wonderful Courbet, which is sitting on that easel over there, which has been in storage for many, many years, was badly restored back in the 1950s and considered not really an exhibitable work, but it was requested for loan by a museum in Switzerland for next summer. So we had it out of storage, took a look at it, and discovered to our delight that once the bad restorations were removed, that it's actually quite a fine picture. It's a rediscovery of something that had really been lost in the collection before.
I know that restoration is a process that needs to be reversible. Can you sort of speak for a moment about what that process for painting is like, how to keep it reversible, and what you do there?
Well, every picture is different. So the process is a slow and organic and kind of revelatory process. The first thing that happens is we have paintings come into the studio, sit on the easel, and I look at them every day. Particularly problematic pictures is the first thing I look at when I come in the morning, and it's the last thing I look at when I leave at night. And I don't do anything to a painting until I'm really confident that I understand how it was made, what the artist's materials were, and what's happened to it since it left the artist's studio. And sometimes those two issues are very clearly resolved and understood, and sometimes they really take months just to understand everything about the work of art. It's a confidence building game. You don't really want to dive into a project until you really have confidence that you know exactly everything you need to know about those two issues, how it was made and what's happened to it. And the guiding principle of modern restoration is that anything that we do to a work of art has to be reversible. And that means, for example, with an oil painting, if we're going to be restoring or retouching parts of the picture that have been damaged, we won't use oil paint, which would then be indistinguishable and unremovable from the artist's original materials. But we'll use something that visually matches, a synthetic resin that visually matches the losses and visually matches the original paint, but can be removed very easily with mild solvents that won't have any impact on what the artist's materials were. So what the artist did and what the artist made is sacrosanct and can never be changed or altered, but anything that a restorer does has to be removable so that at some point in the future when the work has to be redone, someone can come along, take away everything that I may have put on the picture and start fresh.
Could you talk with us for a moment about some of the works you're working on in the studio?
Oh, well, we can talk about the one right behind me.
All righty.
So this is a wonderful picture by the French 18th century artist Baptiste Oudry. It's signed and dated J.B. Oudry, 1754, in the lower left here. It's obviously a portrait of two dogs, probably a portrait that was commissioned by the owner of these two dogs. Oudry was the most important animal and still life painter in France in the 18th century. This is a picture which is privately owned. It belongs to a collector in Dallas who is interested in old master paintings. And it had actually previously been in a French private collection, probably in the same family that commissioned the picture originally in the 18th century, had come down through the centuries and was sold at auction last January when it was purchased by the private collector in Texas, and it came to Dallas. It was covered with an incredibly darkened natural resin varnish, and in fact this is a swab that has some of the varnish on it, and you can see it's almost black.
Right.
It actually had a lot of soot in it, so it might have been hanging over a fireplace. And it was so dark that we actually didn't realize that this little blue stream in the background was a stream.
Oh, wow.
I guess there was no evidence of blue paint there at all. Fortunately, that varnish was very soluble in very mild solvents, so it was very easy to remove all of it. The painting has virtually no damage whatsoever, other than a few tiny little flake losses, which are now filled with this white gesso material. There's a little hole in the lower right-hand corner. Fortunately, a very minor damage that occurred in the past. Now it's waiting for a layer of new varnish, which will be put on. It will be then photographed in this state before I do any restoration. And then I'll fill in the holes with a synthetic-based retouching paint and put a final varnish on it, and put it in the frame, and it will go into our public galleries for exhibition.
Just to sort of finish off, I know that one of the big goals of the Conservation Studio is to sort of forge some collaborations with the local universities. Can you talk with us about that for a moment?
Yeah, the Dallas-Fort Worth area has an incredible richness and depth of scientific expertise at UT Dallas and at UNT and many other universities. So we've been working with both UT Dallas and UNT on a number of conservation science projects. Rather than building an independent conservation science lab in the Dallas Museum of Art, it made more sense to work with the established expertise that's already here, the established equipment that is already here, and really take advantage of the opportunity that kind of partnership will enable. So concurrent with the expansion of the DMA's own conservation program, we're hoping to build a network of conservation science capabilities, not just with the DMA, but also with institutions in the area. And the Eamon Carter Museum, for example, has already been very active with UT Dallas in establishing those kinds of conservation science projects as well.
Well, excellent. Thanks so much for talking with us. The studio looks great, and I know there's going to be some wonderful things to come out of here.
Thank you.
We want to thank Mark for speaking with us. For more information on the new Paintings Conservation Studio, go to dma.org. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
I still got your Polaroid.